We are the One Story Podcast. We believe in the power of a story. Everyone has a story, and that story is meaningful. Your story can make a difference. Your story can inspire others. Your story is important. At the same time, ultimately, everyone's story is a part of one story, the big God story.
It's not what you said. You're not who you said you were. When are you alone? When will you come back home?
Hello, everyone. This is the One Story Podcast. My name is Drew, and I'm with my friend Isaac Labrija.
Yo.
How are you doing today?
Good, man.
Yeah.
Good. A little tired.
Pretty good night.
We're back in the flow.
nights.
Yeah, I love it.
Back to Friday Night Lights.
Feeling good. Vibing.
Football's back in full swing, and I'm excited because the Dolphins are 2-0. So hopefully when you hear this, they're 4-0.
And
whenever it comes
Aaron
out.
Rodgers has a bum knee. The heck?
What's going on with that?
No,
So,
man.
hey, just wanted to give everyone a heads up on the contest, the giveaway, the prize giveaway that we're going to be giving away a one-story T-shirt.
And you should have seen it by now.
That's
if
right.
Not,
You've
there's
seen
a
it
problem.
on Instagram and Facebook, the flyers we're putting out. We extended the contest to the 15th. So you have until the 15th to get your reviews in. That's a review on the podcast player that you listen to,
On
so
the platform.
iTunes or Stitcher.
And please
Okay.
do it. And so we'll be a little honest right now.
What?
I get it that you have, like, people that are listening, I get that you have it.
Don't say it.
Because
Don't say it.
I don't review other podcasts I listen to.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about Mike Erie's podcast, and he says every episode, and
Yeah.
he has a big podcast, and
Yeah.
he still, like, asks for people to rate and review.
Yeah, and I like it.
I've never reviewed. So don't do what I do.
Don't be us.
Please review. We had some stories coming up, like today's episode, that just needs to be heard, and it could be heard if people review and you know, and it can get some more visibility.
Yeah. So review, that gets you into the contest for the free giveaway, and it can be short. Just say, hey, great podcast, or hey, these guys suck, and move along. So leave a review.
Tell the Mexican to stop talking so much.
So, but wait, we're both Mexican.
Oh, dang
it. We gotta unplug. So in today's episode, we have Jeff and Anna Bennett, and this is episode 39. This was great,
such a
great episode. And just of, listen for yourselves. It's about refugees, and there's a crisis, there's a need, and the question is, what are we going to do about it as Christ followers? Regardless of political party, Democrat or Republican, who you support in the office, who you support, whatever, like, what are you going to do as a Christ follower? And Anna gave a, what did she say? Don't be political, be biblical. And I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I said that's gonna be my next tattoo. So far, by the next time I come in, I'm gonna have 2 new tattoos.
Right. So let's get into it. This is episode 39 with Jeff and Anna Bennett. They're still a teenager. But yeah, it'll be good.
So you guys comfortable?
Yeah.
Yes, we good.
Lunar Grill was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you have? What'd you have?
We got the platter with chicken and ground sirloin. Mm-hmm. Really good. And we got the appetizer. Appetizer with hummus. 3 different kinds of hummus.
I always go for the baba ganoush.
Yeah, I like baba ganoush.
Baba ganoush.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I like the baba ganoush as much as I like saying baba ganoush.
We had the kebab platter. Yeah. Double.
Yeah.
The double. We split it. Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
So we're here.
Yes.
Thank you for coming and being with us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, no, this was Drew.
Yeah, we had the connection from Branches before Abby and I moved out to Salt Lake. We were going, and I know Abby served with you, right?
Yeah, she
and
did.
Where?
On the greeting team.
Greeting, welcome team. Yeah,
Mhm.
early in the morning, the early service. And
Yeah.
Did you have the sign where you spin it real fast?
No. No, we just had our card on our shirt. And,
I just came up with something great for my church, though.
Yeah. They'll probably shut it down.
You hear that, Kelly?
So that's where the connection was.
Yeah.
And then we came back, and I always would listen to on the podcast branches their sermons, and so just listened and followed throughout while we were in Salt Lake, and then we came back and we have visited a couple times. But then I was listening to one, and you guys were sharing a little bit about what you've been doing in what would you say, the past year and a half?
A year and a half, over a year and a half.
Yeah, sharing the story of what you guys are doing with your ministry with refugees. And it was just something that definitely spoke to me because just my wife and I, Abby, we have a heart to that. I know when things started happening with the current administration, and when we were in Salt Lake, there was a march actually for refugees to the Capitol building in Salt Lake, and we went on the march. It was Abby and I and then our little son Nolan, and we strolled him up to the Capitol building. And it was just cool to be a part of, just showing. It was basically saying that we were standing with refugees, and not saying that they can't come here.
Yes.
And there's obviously political reasons. There's everything that's involved. But when it comes down to the basics of it, and if you're a Christian, what's the attitude that we should have towards them? Absolutely. I know that there's certain laws that have to be in place. There's certain restrictions. I get that. But what should be the default view towards a person, a refugee? And so that really spoke to me. I told Isaac about it, and then I got in contact with you, Jeff, and we're here now. So maybe you guys can just start off and tell us how that all got started with the ministry you guys are doing.
Well, we just we were watching. I've always had a heart for like refugees and for like the foreigner, and Anna's from Brazil, so I fell in love with a foreigner, and we got married, and then the way we met was through church, and she was part of a Brazilian church, and I was part of the American church, and they rented our space.
Oh, okay.
And this was back in Washington, D.C., on the East Coast. That's where we live. We just moved out here 7 years ago to California.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we and our church used to do mission trips to Brazil and build churches. So and we used to partner with her church, which was great because
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's where we, their church knows the culture. They could be our translator. So I established friendships with the Brazilian church there, and then I met Anna through that church, and through that, and even through my experience of going to Brazil we went for 10 years. We just do 2 to 3 week trips in the summer where we would build churches and do other medical work and share the gospel, and it was a great experience for me, and it helped me realize what it felt like to be a foreigner, to be in another country and not know the language, and to feel lost, and to feel like you just didn't know, you needed help.
Right, yeah.
And gave me a good understanding of that. So when I came back from those trips, I really had a heart for people in this country that had come from other countries. So one of the things I did after I came back, after going for a few years, is I began teaching, and it was actually an honest church. I didn't even know Anna then. And they had a ESL program where you teach English, And so I started doing that 2 nights a week, and that was a great experience. We had people from all over the world that came there. A lot from Brazil and Latin America, and they were India.
Is that just because of in the DC area?
Yeah, the DC area.
You get so much. Yeah.
They were from France, Germany, people from all over. So that's kind of where I had a heart for people from other countries and other nations, and I loved doing the class because I could help them learn English, and I learned about them and their cultures, and then built relationships with them, and then also got to share with them, about the Lord. So that's kind of just a little background of where my heart was, starting off. And then Anna, also, she's from Brazil, so she came here 14 years ago.
2000, 18 years.
18 years. 18, wow. Sorry. And she knows what it's like
firsthand
to come to another country, not know the language. And you want to share a little bit about?
Yeah,
about
when
that?
I was telling someone this week that when I came here, the only two words that I knew how to say was hi and bye. Although I came...
Goes a long way, though, right?
Yes.
And a smile.
But nothing in
Yeah.
between.
Right.
And I used to come just to be a buyer for my own store in Brazil, and for that you don't need to speak English. But when I decided to live here, when I moved, it was very difficult because I couldn't order a simple Coke. Because when I tried to do that the first week that I arrived, the person in that store thought I was looking for Coca. Because that's how I asked.
You called it Coca?
Coca.
Right.
So it didn't play well, right? You can imagine.
Yeah.
So so for me it was like crawling, as a baby, learning how to walk, to talk, and to do everything, to survive. And in a country that I didn't know the language, and I didn't know the language, I didn't know the culture, and I was hopeless because I came, in a different situation that I used to come, with a huge amount of debt and 2 kids, in university in Brazil that I need to support. So, but when I moved, I was blessed by the people who embraced me, due that circumstances, and helped me, 5 days later that I arrived, literally embraced me as their own, which I wasn't because I didn't have anybody, as a family in here.
Right.
So that gave me, that is how I was, let's say how I was served, by those people that I came across when I moved to US. But prior to that, what struck me in terms of the love of God and serving someone was when I became a Christian, also back in Brazil, through my divorce and losing my son. Back then, I didn't need any help financially, furniture, any kind of material help or support. But one thing I needed through that pain was the love of someone who loved me unconditionally, and showed me something that I didn't know, which was taking care of someone in pain and distress, no matter what time of the day, no matter how many times I would reach out for help, just to listen to me. And one time I asked one of those
and that was a church.
That was the church that I got involved.
Some ladies from a church were ministering.
And then one day, I asked, why do you do this to me? Because I just want to understand why so much display of the love that I didn't know. And they looked at me and said, we do this because we love God and we love you. And that stuck with me for 25 years.
Wow.
Yes.
That love that was shown to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I never forgot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
where did you guys meet? When did your guys' paths cross?
Well, like I said, it was at the church. We partnered with her church, and I got to be friends with a lot of people from their church that went on the mission trips with our church, the American church, to Brazil. So I would go visit their church. And then, like I said, then I started teaching ESL in their church. And I don't know if I ever met you because I used to go to, their church was in Washington, D.C., and ours was in Maryland. And then they came and started renting space from us, and they were in our church. And that's when I think I met you when you came to our church, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I was actually speaking in their church one day.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And
It's a funny story. You want to hear?
I do. I want to hear. I want to hear the lines
Okay.
that Jeff was dropping on you on.
No, it was the opposite.
I didn't
Well,
drop any. I was there to do God's work.
Me and my daughter were really involved in the church, but as any good Brazilian, we were always late. And of course,
Brazilian time, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
and everything was already on, and probably the worship was already, on. And I came, and everybody has their own seat at the church, right? You know exactly what you're gonna sit. So the place that I always sat was behind the pastor in the second pew. And as soon as I get there, I saw, Jeff's back next to my pastor, and I looked, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's so handsome. So I
love when she tells this story.
So I looked, I kind of was like inclined to look better his hand to make sure that he doesn't have a ring.
Oh.
And then when I saw and then I saw that he doesn't have a ring, I was like, oh, wow, he doesn't have a ring. So he went to the pulpit to speak, and while he was speaking, I don't even know, to tell you the truth, what he said. But
wasn't that important, Jeff?
But one
she
thing,
wasn't paying attention.
One thing, I pray to God, and girls, whoever is listening to me, listen to this prayer. I say, God, why can I have a man like that who has a heart for you and is so handsome? And that was it.
It's a good prayer.
That was the only.
And he answered the prayer?
The only thing that I said. So when he was, of course, he was talking about the ESL. So when he got out of the pulpit, was the end of the service. So I jumped, got him right in the corner and I say, oh, I'm going to your ESL class. And I was living in Virginia, and that class was in Maryland. For me, it was a long distance drive. And he said, oh, yeah, but you speak English very well. I said, no, I don't. I really don't speak English very well. And then, things...
It's went from there,
how it started.
That's how it started. That's how it started.
That's a good story.
And she was actually, and she became my favorite student.
Yeah. I'm sure she did.
To say the least.
Yeah.
For a month. Yeah, I just did the sacrifice for a month.
What was that drive like? I know like some of those states over there are kind of like you can drive across the state in a few hours or something like that. I'm not sure. So what was the distance you were driving to go to this class?
It was not the distance, but I mean I used to work probably back then 10 hours a day. And then go. Ooh. So it was a long day and then coming back. But you can easily do in an hour. Which for DC areas.
So did you did you have to end up asking him out, or did you get the hint, Jeff?
No, I got the hint.
Okay.
I could tell. Yeah.
Yeah, but regardless, it took us 4 years after that to start dating.
It took a while.
It
Yeah.
took a while.
I mean, we became friends after that, and
That's good.
It took several years after that before we actually, before I actually, I guess got up the nerve to ask her out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got married, and you guys have been married for 10 years.
10 years.
And we've been married for 10 years. Yeah. We got married in the church. It was pretty cool. We had both of our pastors did the ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
Her Brazilian pastor and the American pastor.
Cool.
So half the church was Brazilian and half American.
That is cool.
It was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, we have 250 people.
Yeah.
Wow. Dang. It was
a big celebration.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. It was really beautiful.
Yeah.
It was.
So once you guys got married, when did God put the ministry on your heart? Like, how did that come about?
Well, like I said, I was involved with the English as a second language. And then when they came to our church, I actually became the director of it in our church there in Maryland. And then it was like, well, it wasn't long after that, our daughter, my stepdaughter, Tarsila, moved out to California. So then we began visiting her here in California. And then after several summers, we said, why don't we just go out there? It's pretty nice out there. Yeah. So we picked up and moved to California. It was really a step of faith because we didn't have any jobs. We're not independently wealthy. We had to just pick up, move to the West Coast, find new jobs. And then it was out here in California that we were just, I guess what happened is we were just kind of like watching the news, right? And just seeing what was going on in Syria and around the world. And you remember that
what year is this?
Well, this was probably, I'm thinking 2015. Mm-hmm. That was the year that the that the war was going on in Syria. It had started a few years before that, but there's that famous photograph of that little boy that got washed up on the beach. Do you remember that? And he had like little red socks, and he was trying to cross over the sea to leave Syria, and a lot of the boats were capsizing, and his family was killed.
Dang.
And that photograph went viral, and I remember just watching that and seeing that, and then just learning about what was going on in Syria, and our hearts were just kind of stirred, and we just had the sense that, we don't want to just watch this and see what's going on in the news every night. We need to do something. We need to not just be spectators. So it was at that time. How did we find out? We went to a fundraiser.
Yes, I would say we actually have a inclination to love and have compassion for people from the Middle East or even Asian, because we work a lot with Africans, and they're not from the Middle East, they are Asian and Central Asian. But for that part of the war, that when things were really bad, probably 2011 in Palestine, Israel and Palestine. So I know for Christian community, this is a very delicate topic. But we try to educate ourselves. That's back even in DC. Educate ourselves. What exactly is behind of all that? And we watch many, documentaries and books and all that. And we have compassion for the Palestine people. And so that was in our heart already, that everything started with them to begin with. And then when all this was happening, in Syria, and that picture went out, and even prior to that, because we were already moved to the Palestinian situation, we watching even more. We watching the news with very, very carefully to understand what was going on. And a lot of time we were crying in front of the TV, both of us.
Yeah, it's sad.
And we got to the point where we were saying that it got to be something else than cry and pray. It got to be something else that we have to do other than just, watching without doing anything.
Kind of helpless.
Yes. And then we went to an event. In that event, I met someone that was from Palestine. And
that was just to tell them what that was. It was a fundraiser for Syrian refugees. And it was a Syrian Christian church
in Costa Mesa.
In Costa Mesa, they had a Syrian congregation that met there in the evenings, Sunday evenings, and they supported a refugee camp in Lebanon, and they were having a fundraiser for that. So we just were invited by
this Palestinian lady that told, she invited me to Facebook and she invited, and I looked, and I knew it was like 12 minutes from our house, to say, let's go Friday night. Yeah. So we went to that fundraising there. She was there. We didn't know anybody except her that I met once, and she invited me on Facebook, and then a lady from Syria. It was a mother and a daughter. They have a podcast. They have a I don't know if it's called podcast exactly.
A vlog or a blog?
It's not a blog. They have this. I'm sorry, I totally forgot the name of it. But what they tried to do with all that when that happened was make sure that we know what a city is, what is located, what they have as a culture, who they are, and everything. They live here for over 30 years. The daughter is American citizen and everything.
They do exhibits about Syria,
about it. Yes,
in like colleges and a lot of different places.
Yes.
We're just about the history of Syria and
educating people
Yes.
of letting us know, if I was to go to one, like, these are the people of Syria. This is what they're putting a face to the statistics.
Yes, exactly.
Could you guys speak into that?
No, we don't. We were
no. Could you speak into like the history or a little bit of of the conflict that's going on over there
in Syria? Yes, we can. But although we, for some reason, we never worked with one single Syrian family throughout this
Well-
almost 2 years. As a 101. We have serious kids
Yeah,
that
we have with some
is
of the kids,
participating
yeah.
in one of the things
One
that
of the
we are part
programs.
of on one Saturday every month. But with the families, the serious family, we have never been in contact with, although they live in the same area that we always go. But for some reason, we have been exposed and have relationships and everything with the Afghans.
Yeah. But with the leader of Syria is this guy called Assad. He's their president. And, yeah, I mean, they were just, it was back when Obama was president, and there was a lot of things going on in that area of the world, in the Middle East, and people
Was
were...
it during like what do they call it, like the Arab Spring?
The Arab
Yes.
Spring, exactly.
And they
And so-
started speaking out against
yeah.
their government.
Was
That's
that
correct.
was that when Egypt? Is that around the
I
time
think
when
it started
Egypt had
with
had a revolt?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And so it was that time. Yeah, it was the
Yeah.
Arab Spring.
Yeah.
So they started, speaking out against the government, and the government just, cracked down really hard. They weren't allowed to do that, and they started, and it started like a civil war, and the government was
Right.
just, and still is to this day, just has killed so many civilians.
Of their own
Yeah.
citizens.
Of their own citizens, yeah. I mean, because they indiscriminately bomb, places where there's a lot of civilians. So that's
which is just their neighborhoods, right?
yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
So that's kind of what was going on. And we heard people at this fundraiser, and we went to another fundraiser the next night that we were invited to. It was at a Jewish synagogue, and that was an interfaith event fundraiser and it was about Syrians too. And there was a Syrian guy there that spoke that night too, and he was actually a doctor, and he would treat people in the hospital, but they weren't allowed to treat people that had been shot on the other side. Like if somebody came into the hospital that the government, troops had shot or were bombed or whatever, the government
couldn't treat 'em.
The government did not want them treating them.
Wow.
And he couldn't do that as a doctor. He said, he became a doctor to help all people.
Anybody.
And so he fled and came to the United States, and then he goes around and speaks about it too. Yeah.
So he was a refugee himself.
yeah.
Yes. Yes. So
But he was one of the he came from a family that had money. So
he came before the whole thing.
yeah, I
It's
mean,
so bad.
he didn't come as a refugee. He came into the country and it was a different status. Yeah.
What does it look
He got
like-
a visa, yeah.
What does it look
That was
like for a Syrian to escape their country?
Well, right now to come to U.S.
Or just to escape the country?
Yeah, like what does it look like? What's the process? What are they going through?
through the boats, like you have seen. And,
Yeah, or they can go into Lebanon.
Yeah. Yep.
Egypt. I mean, Lebanon has taken a couple million. I believe it's a couple.
But it's
million
not like
of
they
the
go
refugees.
to an airport and then like
no.
fly
No,
and like
no,
we land in a
no,
new country and
no.
stuff like
That's
that.
why they
No, they're-
risk their lives, in boats and cross the sea and end up in Egypt or somewhere else.
Or cross, or just go across the land. If they're not.
or Lebanon or
But they-
whatever is their neighbors.
And are they being accepted by these surrounding countries?
They are. I mean, Lebanon's been pretty amazing, accepted. But they're in camps. They're in refugee camps,
Yeah.
and it's difficult to assimilate
'cause they-
in. But they have allowed millions of them to come over the border, and they're fleeing for a lot of them. They're fleeing for their lives.
Yes.
I mean, their homes are gone. They're bombed out. They have nowhere else to go.
Yes.
So they're a lot of them just have the shirts on their back, and they might have a few things in there.
Just to give some context, I looked up some statistics, and right now it's saying, or actually this is at the end of 2016, so not even right now, there was 12 million people displaced from Syria.
From Syria only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Syria only.
Yeah.
There's 68 million
Millions
in the world
In the world. That's
displaced.
correct.
And that's either, that could be
Wait,
displaced
there's
from their
68 million refugees?
refugees
Yes.
in the world.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, I mean, that just,
That almost doesn't seem like a real number.
I know it's hard to
And
That's
it-
like almost a third of our country.
it's hard to
in the
wrap your
US.
mind around that. That's it. This is the worst refugee crisis in the history
Right.
in history right now. It's worse than the refugee
War.
crisis of World War II. And like you said, I heard there's over 60 displaced. A lot of them are still in their own country, but there's like 20 million that are displaced outside of their own country.
Yeah, there's some
that are in
people
camps,
that have to be out of their country, and then there's some that are just displaced from their home.
Right.
They're not in their home, but I mean,
Right.
but you're displaced. Imagine you had to
Yeah,
leave your home.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
just homeless.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes, that's exactly what they are.
And so it also talks about, like, in Jordan and Lebanon, there are a good number of Syrian refugees there that they're helping them out.
Right.
So that's just to give some context. I mean, I have, it says Central African Republic, Central America, Europe, Iraq, Southern Sudan, Syria,
Somalia,
Ukraine,
And these
Yemen.
are all the countries that they're
Yeah.
going to.
Have some, no, these are
all the countries where there's
people-
refugees.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are
And I
coming
won't go
from
into
those
all the
countries.
statistics, but just there's that many refugees throughout
Around the world.
Yes.
that are
So-
just seeking help. I mean,
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. To survive. You know,
Right.
they just want to survive.
and it talks about it's from a result of persecution, conflict, violence, or human rights violations. So there's a number of different reasons.
Yes.
Exactly.
And the first fundraiser that we went was actually to raise money to buy oil for the lanterns to be used in this in the Lebanon refugee camp, that they were dying because it was winter there.
It was for heat. Yeah, it was for the
heat,
heaters.
For
yeah.
the heaters. So even though you already crossed the sea, even though you already left, the country, that you're dying, you can still die when you're in those camps because the need is so big.
Yeah.
Because even Lebanon accepted them, and somehow they still dying in the shore. Because it's not enough resource.
They don't have resources, yeah.
When we have a number like that,
Yeah,
as much as the United Nations and in any other country send the people or resources to help, it's not enough because it's a lot.
I mean, you're talking about millions of people.
Millions
I
of
mean,
people, yeah.
That's
And diseases and and
Or
everything
you think
else.
about what happened when we had Katrina, right? And they had the mega dome was full of people.
Superdome.
The Superdome.
Mm-hmm.
Mega,
chaos.
super. It's like the same thing right now. Just kidding.
Get it right. Saints player.
But like we had a hard time. We're a first world country and we had a hard time managing
Right.
that.
Yes.
So we're talking about, I mean, I don't know if that area is third world or whatever, but you're talking about
It's a developing country.
But
Yeah.
the number
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
I mean,
So it's,
And such
way beyond what we dealt with during
Right.
our natural disaster.
Yeah. And it's
So-
way beyond what they can handle, too.
Yes. And going
in the
to-
neighboring countries, yeah. They're doing their best, I think, but it's way beyond that, yeah.
And going to that fundraising and met the mom and the daughter who was talking about Syria, she recited a poem that was so beautiful. And then when she finished, I went and talked to her and say, "Do you mind to give me the transcript of this poem?" Because it was something like, "Who am I as an American citizen, but also as a Syrian?" And she gave me her number and website and everything. And then she invited us to go to the next day. That was the synagogue. And then we were even more exposed to statistics and
Heard more stories,
stories. And it was a beautiful thing because we heard Christians praying for that situation. We heard Jewish praying for that situation. We heard Muslim praying for that situation. So it was a moment that we were together.
Wow. It's powerful.
Asking God, the same God, because they don't worship another God. They worship God. That's one interesting thing that we learned was that if a Christian person is praying in their own language, they don't say God, they say Allah, because Allah is God.
Yeah.
It's the God of Abraham. So it was a beautiful thing because we see that we have a lot in common with all of you right now. We're in the same building asking God to intervene in that situation. Ask the one truly God to intervene in that situation. That gave us a sense of they are our brothers and sisters. They are people that were creating by God's image. They are people that worship the God of Israel, the God of Abraham. So, in seeing all that,
Even though we know there's a distinction that they're not our
Right.
brothers and sisters in
in
Christ.
Christ, yes.
And like you said, they're all image bearers of God.
Yes.
And all
Yes.
deserve dignity and respect
Absolutely.
and care
Absolutely.
and love
Absolutely.
from us.
Absolutely.
Right.
And we have a lot in common. When you get to know them, and even we've learned a lot about the Muslim faith, because most of the refugees that pretty much all of them that we've been working with here in our backyard in Orange County are of the Muslim faith.
Mm-hmm.
And we really do have, we've learned a lot. We have a lot in common. And they, they believe in most of the prophets, and Jesus is, other than Muhammad, Jesus is the highest prophet. So we have that in common, that you can have a conversation with them. They hold Jesus in high esteem. They don't look at him as God as we
God,
do,
right.
Yes.
but they do hold him in high esteem, and they really have reverence for him. And that's the place where we hope to build relationships and be able to have spiritual conversations and be able to talk to them about Jesus. That's where we want to go with this ministry. We've had some opportunities.
Yes.
And
very
not that it's...
No, I'm sorry. I was just saying that's very insightful, because I probably fit in the category as your typical American, right? Like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't. You automatically think Muslim, just like opposite of Christianity,
Yeah.
just because that's what you think. Because
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never
We
asked.
didn't know
Right.
either.
No, they
So that's
believe
very
in
interesting.
Abraham and David and
Abraham is their father.
I knew Abraham,
Yeah.
but
Their
just
father.
I didn't know that they acknowledge Jesus as
They
a
do.
prophet.
Yes.
At all.
Not only
Yeah.
that, they believe in the virgin birth.
Oh, really?
Yes. They have a lot of reverence for Mary.
That's
you know.
interesting.
It's interesting.
Yes.
I'm sorry,
And-
Drew.
And some
No.
other things that we had no clue, and we have been educated and
So I'm not alone.
exposed to things that, but regardless, not regardless, the faith in Jesus, or having him as their own saviors like we do, it's not when I say regardless, that my understanding and Jeff's understanding is that our main point is to serve them as Jesus would do.
Amen.
When we leave our house and we drive 15, 18 minutes to that complex, we feel like we get in a airplane and we're going to Iraq. We're going to Afghanistan. We're going to Syria. We're going to a mission trip. We're going to serve. We're going to love them. And I don't know how to explain to you guys, but I'm crazy about them. I love them. You have no idea how much I do. And I don't know why. I couldn't love anybody else. I could love my own community. Not that I don't love my own community, but I could have the same fire in my heart for any other community. But I have for them.
Yeah.
I do. I have for them. And when I go back to the Bible and see the passage that God had that compassion for Hagar. God had that compassion for Ishmael. If God did it, who am I to not do the same?
Yeah.
And I do.
You have that love because God loves them.
Exactly.
Because they're his
Exactly.
children.
And the
Right.
Bible says nothing, all good things coming from the heaven, coming from God. So if that is good, it's because it's God put it in our heart to love them.
Amen.
If every Christian showed that love, we probably not even have a war today.
Just a fraction of it, yeah, just a
Yeah.
little bit
we
of
probably
it.
wouldn't have a
Right.
war today. Because that's the only thing we need is love them as your neighbor. They live 50 minutes from our house. Some of them that we have been in contact with, they have been giving their lives to the American people. We probably don't know that. But when you see some of those ladies with the hijab, when you see some of those men dressing with the robe and everything, you don't know, but a lot of them that are here right now, they are here just because they were serving in Afghanistan and in Iraq to saving American lives.
Yeah.
And a lot
It's
of
true.
people don't even know that. So look at to
They
them.
were working with the military
Yeah.
Like
a lot of
supporting
them.
them. Yeah.
Yes.
And then their lives
Yeah.
would become in danger over there.
for helping.
For helping.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
When
And that's why they are here.
A lot of the community we work with the most is the Afghan community, even though we've met some Iraqis and some
Yeah.
more of the Syrian children, with some of those programs. But yeah, we knew three brothers, and they worked for the American military, and they were like they were like human shields. And they would go out with the military, and like if there was a bridge or something, they would go ahead first and check out the bridge. Or if some vehicle came up, they would go out and check out the vehicle first. So they basically would put their lives on the line for the American military. And so eventually, and there's other American corporations and all that are working there too, that people are, but what happens is that they're eventually, a lot of times, Al Qaeda or
Taliban.
or the Taliban will find out, that these people are, and they'll get their names, and then their lives will be threatened, or their families' lives will be threatened with being kidnapped or killed. So usually the American military helps them to get a special visa to come over here.
But there's still I've heard of I think on the radio or different things, even those people that have served on our side find trouble getting amnesty into the United States.
Absolutely, The vetting process is the same. They're vetting,
it's not like you're moved front of the line.
No, not whatsoever. They can wait a long time.
Yeah, it can take. I mean, it's a little bit easier status than just like coming from Syria.
Yes,
because they have somebody to vouch for them.
Right.
Somebody from the military or somebody they worked with will vouch for them. But it still takes a few years, usually at least a few years, and they have to go through a lot of hoops to be able to come here.
Well, I don't want to get political. But didn't Donald Trump do something where he stopped immigration? Or I don't know.
Well,
Wasn't there something like that?
He put a ban.
Yeah.
And then that was overturned by a judge, and then now we're to a point where I was reading up on it that he's just basically, it's different than past administrations, the number of refugees that he's accepting into the United States. So you can put a cap on it. So like it could be 90,000 for the year, or let's just say right now I think the number is at 30,000 is the cap, max, but they brought it down. There's even less people that are coming through.
But even if it was 100,000, we're talking about
millions,
tens of millions of people.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. So
exactly.
And
these other countries like Lebanon and Jordan and even Germany's taken a lot, and even Canada's taken in way more than us. To me, it does. It hurts. It bothers us. It hurts our hearts, even from a political standpoint. That here we are, the richest country on the earth, that basically has the most resources, and we're like doing like the least now. I mean, and we used to do, like you said, Drew. Yeah, we used to do like 75,000, 100,000 refugees a year would come into this country. Now, I think right now there's been 25,000 so far this year.
No,
it's been the lowest in like decades.
To where
has ever come in, and that's because of the policies of our president today.
Like the past ones, like the goal was 90,000 or the goal was 100,000.
Yeah.
So we want to bring that many people in. Now it's like this is the ceiling at 30,000, but we hope that it's less than that. You know, like the mentality has changed.
Yes.
And
so
okay, but here's the bottom: we can't accept every refugee here into the country, right? I mean, like just I think logistically and probably whatever. I'm not that political, but at least we can bring in refugees and help and support. But then there should also be some kind of financial aid, I think, where the refugees are being displaced and where they're at, and like that's something I think the U.S. could do better. But I mean,
no doubt about it. I mean, I think we've done better over the past several years, up until the last couple of years, let's say the last year and a half. We've done far less than we did do before, and we have the resources to be able to do that, and they are pretty. I mean, it's pretty quick that the husband usually does find work, gets a job. A lot of times it starts with minimum wage, and they do need a lot of help when they get here. We can kind of go into that if you want. That's kind of part of what we've been doing.
Yeah, because
trying to help them to acclimate here.
Let's jump to you guys had that second night where you got a lot of education, the second fundraiser, and then when did it start to where you guys started actually, doing some kind of outreach?
Okay, in connection with this, so we got all the the contact for this Syrian lady and her daughter, and we connected with her and asked how can we help in your own community, the Syrian community, and she said, well, I need books, and putting that requests in Facebook and Instagram for books. I need books. I didn't understand exactly why just books, but that's what she said, and that's what I did through the social media. Someone from our church saw that I was doing that, and she told me that I know someone else that has been involved with refugees. Let me give you her contact. That was Minda, and she was back then. She was volunteering for World Relief in Garden Grove. And then I contacted. We have a conference call actually with Minda for her to let us know what she was doing, what World Relief was, and how can we get involved. And that's when we went to the World Relief, and we had something that they call introduction. And that, like I said, that was almost 2 years ago, which was giving you all the biblical background, why we should be helping the refugees, why we should be serving them and welcoming them. And throughout the Bible, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, right here we probably have 40 scriptures, like as you can see. I was.
This is a little handout that they gave you.
Yeah,
they give you some material when you do that introduction, and it was one of the most beautiful Bible study that we were participating. And long time.
It's a great organization, World Relief. It's a Christian organization that helps to resettle refugees when they come here, and they've been doing it since the Vietnam War.
That's correct.
And the first refugees that they were taken in,
like around 1980.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it was probably before that, because they were bringing in people from Vietnam.
Yeah.
So I think it was back in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, and then they've been helping to resettle refugees ever since. Yeah. It's a great organization. Yeah.
Yes.
So we got involved with them, and like you said, we went to that introduction with them, which we didn't realize it was going to be like a Bible study. And it was a great Bible study, just learning about, because the whole history, through the Old Testament with the Israelites, a lot of times they were foreigners, and they were exiles. In Egypt and Babylon and different places, and then they go through, and even Jesus, you could say, was a refugee.
Yes.
Well, yeah, when they had to flee to Egypt.
When they had to flee to Egypt, they had to flee the country for their lives, pick up what they had, and go to Egypt. So, so that was So then we got involved with World Relief, and we learned about what they do and the programs that they have. So we started to partner with them. And then that's when you found out about the first thing you went to was a baby shower.
A
and
baby
you can share
shower
about
was
that.
15 pregnant women, in the church in Garden Grove, and
they were having a baby shower for them.
And my job was to pick one of the Afghanis pregnant woman and take to that church and be with her and brought her home. And I did that, just two of us in my car, and I didn't know how to speak Farsi
and her two little kids, right?
Farsi and her two little kids.
And
she didn't know how to speak
complete
English.
Strangers? You did not know who they were.
No.
Okay.
She was the sweetest thing ever. She ended up calling me mom after some of our, we built a relationship with them. They moved to Seattle. So we went to this church, and there was this beautiful Bible study, this beautiful baby shower set up, and they have so many things to those moms that my car didn't have enough space to bring everything home.
The gifts that they were given?
The gifts they were given to those ladies. It was 15 ladies, 14 Afghanis and one Iraqi lady. So when I noticed that I didn't have enough space in my car to bring everything, I noticed there was one lady that were very popular, and she's speaking English and everything, and I say, hey, can you help me? Do you have someone who helped me to put all those stuff in my car, in someone else's car, to bring back to the, to the Cinnamon Creek, which is where they live in Garden Grove? And then she said, I can help you. So because of that, I said, so you Afghani? She said, yes, I am. I said, what's your name? She said, Nazi. I said, okay, can I have your number in case I need some thing and get to know more and everything? And she, yes, please. So she gave me her number, and she drove her car with all the people, because she had a big car, all the people and more staff, and I drove mine with with the lady. And I remember she saying, she called her husband and she spoke with him in her own language. And then she looked at me and say, in very broken English, she said, my husband say, Americans love my baby. I look at her and I say, yes, we do. We do love you, baby. And we do love you. And then we went home, and she was so happy to have that love and those things with her and everything. And I was so sure that was the place that we are supposed to be moving forward. And Nazi became our best friend.
She became our contact to that lady. She's an amazing woman. She spends her life, she's retired living off her 401k, and she just helping primarily the Afghan community, because that's where she's from, and spends all her time helping them getting resettled, meeting their needs. And she became our contact person as to, what the needs are. And like if a new family came, she would call us and say, hey, we got a new family coming in. And there's a place it's called Cinnamon Creek. It's like 20 minutes from our house up Brookhurst, off of Brookhurst Street. And there's like 30 families, 25.
45 at some point.
Well, there might be less now, but that are living up there. And anyway, when a new family came in, she would tell us what they needed. And then Anna, who's great, with social media, and she would just put out the word. Like basically when they come with nothing. Mm-hmm. And they in this place they can get an apartment there because the guy doesn't, because they don't have any, they're fully legal. They have fully legal status, but they don't have any credit or anything like that. Don't even have a job yet. Mm-hmm. But this guy there will rent, apartments to them. It's not the cheapest though, and it's usually we know families of 4, 5, 6 people. I think Shear's even got 7. And they usually start with a 1-bedroom apartment.
Dang.
And they don't have anything.
And they basically don't have anything.
And that's what I was going to say. Real quick, I'll let you get back to it. But even when if they're able to escape and even get here, you're starting with nothing. You're starting from zero.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it's not like America. I mean, we struggle to survive.
Right.
We think we struggle.
Well,
yes,
exactly.
Absolutely.
No, but you're right. You're right, though. It's like we are so blessed, and that's the thing.
Right.
Until you put that in perspective, you're like, gosh,
And one interesting thing is when I have heard that people say, well, in America, we also have people who struggle, like you just said, people who are homeless and has
true.
a lot of hardship, financially and everything. And then look at me as an immigrant. I started realizing, yes, I was an immigrant. I am an immigrant. But if I want to go back to my country, I could. Mm-hmm. That's the main difference between me and them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I still have a country. I still have a home.
Mm-hmm.
They don't.
Mm-hmm.
And these people, they're probably appreciative and they're here, but there's probably a lot of them that want to be home.
Absolutely.
That's their home. Like they're not choosing to
No, they
want to
didn't
be
choose
here.
that life.
Yeah.
They didn't choose that path.
All I could think of is imagine of not feeling totally at home here, not feeling welcome or at home.
Right.
But then you don't have, it's like you
can't
don't
even
have
go
a
back
home.
home.
You don't have a home
Right.
on earth
Right.
in this life. You're
Yes.
here and like, I don't have a
Yes.
place.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
It is a good point.
The interesting thing that we did at World Relief in that introduction was a simulation of you have to. You can explain better about what the game that they did with us. Do you remember?
Well, I'll try, but they do a simulation of what it would feel like to be, a refugee, and they give you what was it? They gave us,
I think 12 pieces of paper.
10 or 12 pieces of paper, whatever, and you write things that are important on there, to you, like your wife, your kids, your job, your house, just different things. Mm-hmm. And then they
big screen TV.
Yeah, exactly. Your pool, whatever. And then they come around and they take like 2 away, and they say, "How did that?"
You have to choose.
Like what?
First.
What to give up?
That's correct. You had to choose which ones to give up. You had to give a few of them away, and then they did that again, I think, and then the choices get harder, and they did that down till you had, I think, 2 left, and then they just came and they took one away themselves, and you had one thing left, and it just it helped you to understand that these people are making like decisions that we've never had to even think about. I mean, whether I can take my mother or whether I can take my father or whether I have to leave my family.
Because you're talking about people at this point, not things.
Right,
things.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the things are not as important, obviously, but you get down to choices of, like, some of them have to make choices where the husband has to leave first.
I can't handle
And most of the people, all the people that we meet here, they're not, by the end of it, Anna was actually crying by the end of that.
Yeah.
But,
I have to
when
give
we
up
did that.
my daughters. I have to give up a lot of things. And at the end, I have Jeff.
Well, thank
on my
God.
hand.
Thank God she had
You
me.
made it.
Yeah. But I give
No, but that's
up
true.
my
It's-
daughters. I give
Yeah.
up my daughters. It probably was taken from me because I don't
No,
know.
it was taken.
It was
yeah.
taken from me.
Yeah.
You know, and besides everything else, job, possessions,
Yeah.
dignity, everything else. And I have Jeff. And I don't remember what you had.
I don't remember what I had left either.
But I was,
it was
crying. I was crying because I couldn't imagine myself having to leave my kids behind. No choice to get in a boat, be without them.
Yeah.
And
And not knowing what is going to be tomorrow, what is going to be 2 hours from that time
Yeah.
that I need to leave. So that is the life of a refugee.
yeah.
And there's millions of people in the world right now that have made that
At
choice
this
or are
moment.
making that choice.
Right.
At this
right
moment,
now.
right
Right.
now.
Yeah.
At this
Mhm.
moment.
Oh,
right now.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And these people, like a lot of the people that we work with, most of them had come with their family, but some of them, all of them left their mothers, their fathers, their brothers,
Right.
even siblings, there. So they come here with basically nothing. They've left their family. They don't know the language. They don't know the culture, and they're starting from scratch. So they need the generosity of others, and they need the help because they don't get enough support. The government does give them some support and gives them a staple to help them, pay their rent, but it's not a whole lot. And as soon as the husband gets a job, then it gets cut down, and they live very humbly. And if it wasn't for the generosity of people, they wouldn't have furnished apartments. And that's kind of what we got started with getting involved in. And Anna would put the word out on social media that we need beds, we need, whatever, tables, we need refrigerators. Sometimes she put the word out, we need a refrigerator. We'd end up with 2. The generosity, even within our own church and with other people, was pretty amazing to us.
And this is just something that you guys are doing on your own. I mean,
Yeah.
As a
with
family.
your spare time.
As a family,
Yeah.
we used to do that very often, pretty much every other Saturday.
We were doing
in the
every other
beginning.
Saturday.
And then my granddaughter is 16 years old. She's in high school. And then they play soccer with the kids. Play soccer with the kids on
Wednesday nights.
Wednesdays afternoon. And that's another part of it, So, yes, it's a family is God's slash Bennett's business.
It's God's business, that's for sure.
No, that's awesome.
So through that, we would do distributions, and my daughter has a pickup truck, and I'd go get the pickup truck, and it got to be a bit much at some points because I was driving all over and drove to L.A., the other side of L.A. one time to get a bunk bed because the whole family was sleeping in one bed. Basically, and we brought them bunk beds, and then people from our small group at church provided the mattresses for them, and but it's been neat to see how God has worked through that, and then through that we got to know the people in the community, and we got to have conversations with them, and most of these men, like from Afghan or Iraq, they can speak some English because they were working with the American military or American organization. The women and the kids don't know any English for the most part, and so they need help with that too. And they would ask us in for tea, and we'd get to know them. A lot of them would have us in for a meal, and then like there's this one family that we called the lady tonight to wish her happy birthday, but we just kind of they had us in every other weekend. We came for tea, and we just got to know them really well. It's Fazil and Farzana, and they have 2 little kids, and they have no other family here. And he got a job at a bank. He's doing okay.
He's making $11 an hour.
Yeah, they don't have we just helped him get a car not long ago. And that was somebody from the church donated a car.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And he hasn't gotten his license yet. Farzana, we found out she just passed the test. He hasn't got. They got 2 little kids, Yusuf and Ibrahim, and so we took them to the air show. We've taken them to the beach. Just gone to the park with them. So we've established friendships with them and some of the others. And that's really what it's about. That's what they want. They want to develop friendships. They want to develop relationships. And one day after she's a great cook too. So we don't mind going there to have a meal. And one time after we ate the meal, Farzana came out, and Anna's the one that usually gets emotional, but I could get emotional here. Even though I've told this story several times, but she came after that and she just said, we basically, you guys are our family here. We don't have any family here, and we look at you as like our mom and dad, and as like grandparents for our kids.
Wow. So
we feel like their kids are our surrogate grandkids. When they have a birthday, we're there for them, and we just try to come alongside them and help them and love them, and love them with the love of Christ, and whether they come to church or not, and we hope they do, and we hope we're going to get to that place. But all we've been doing with them is just coming alongside them, loving them.
But that's what God's called us to do.
Right.
And you guys are living it out. You're a testament to what
faith.
God has called us to do, is just to love one another, to love God, to love people, and just to live it out, not expecting anything in return.
Right.
Yeah.
And you guys are doing it. I'm so moved by that story.
I was a teacher for 21 years. My background is in biology, and I have master's degrees and everything. So I taught biology for 16 years in Brazil, but started working in the government for 21 years. So as a teacher, I usually throw something to my class and never pick it up until I have the right opportunity to connect the dots. So remember when I started talking in here, I said that when I became a Christian, someone told me that the reason why they were doing that for me was because they loved Jesus and they loved me. That was told me when I was 30 years old. I'm 55 years old. And a year and a half ago, with the first family that we got involved with, we took them.
And that was the one from the baby shower.
For the baby shower.
Nasima and Parwiz was her husband. We took them to the 4th of July.
The 4th of July, yeah.
With some friends from our church, had an open house, and they wanted to come, so we went and picked them up because they don't have a car yet, and took them back to watch the 4th of July parade in Huntington Beach. They loved it, And I've heard, I had somebody say to me, and then I'll let you finish that story. But I heard somebody say, well, one time I was actually at a men's retreat for our church, and we were just sitting around talking, and this is one of the myths. There's a lot of them that we're learning that kind of need to be dispelled. But he said, we was kind of sharing a little bit about what we were doing. He said, but I've heard there's Muslims. They don't want to acclimate into our culture. They want to stay by themselves. They don't want to be. I said, really? Where'd you? How do you know that? Yeah. Basically, that's what I've heard. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I just had to say, you know what? We work with this community. They're thankful to be here, to be able to start a new life, to be able to live in safety, to be able to have an education for their kids, to be able to work, to live in safety. And you know what? I said they do want to acclimate. What they really appreciate is if an American will come alongside them and show some interest in them and be a friend to them. So that's I didn't tell them that's a myth, but that really is a myth. I mean, they want to acclimate. They want to be part of our society. They want to be successful, and they need help to do it.
And how could they if people just walk by them?
Exactly.
If people just overlook them because they're wearing a hijab or,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we went to the 4th of July that day, and then I let Anna finish that story. So then we brought them back to our house and showed them where we lived, and then
at some point, when we were back to our house, he said, "Why do you do this for us?" And I have the opportunity to say, because I love God and I love you. 30 years later, God gave me the opportunity. I never had the opportunity before. I served in my church in a missions commission for many, many years. I have a heart to serve, but I never have this question asked. Mm-hmm. So I could answer with the same words that I heard 25 years ago. And I was so happy to say that. And they are a little different from us in terms of the reverence they have for when we speak the word God or when we talk about things about God. I think in the West, we tend to be very relaxed about, God's, business. But they have a lot of reverence. It's something that I really admire. And when I say that, he inclined himself and put his hand in his heart. That a sign of respect
and understanding,
and praised. The Lord, and praised God for that expression of. So, experiences like that, it's building up. It has been building our faith. Has been showing us how much love is poured to us to give it to others. It's right now for us is to them, but any of us as a Christian, we have a calling to love, and we have a calling to put this love in action, because the worst thing I think a Christian can do, Christians out there, is just say, "Oh, I'll pray for you." Pray and walk along, because it's what it is needed. Jesus walked in people's house that nobody want to go.
Amen.
Nobody want to go. Nobody want to hug. Nobody want to be there. Yeah. And he was there. So here we are in 2018. What the church is in decline. The church has this narrative. The society has the narrative that the church is the worst place that you can be because all what is out there. So it is a time right now in my lifetime, in your lifetime as a Christian, to walk in faith, to be the arms and the legs of Jesus and say, "Hey, I'm here for you because Jesus told me so."
Yeah.
And to love our neighbors, these people are our neighbors now. It's cool. The Great Commission was to go and make disciples of all nations, right? And what was it, in Judea, in Jerusalem, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. Well, they're here now. They're like they've come to us through the refugees and just through immigration. And I like the verse that Jesus said that what was the greatest commandment. So love the Lord God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then the lawyer asked him, "Well, who is my neighbor?" And Jesus said, "Whoever is in need." Yeah. And so whoever it is, whether that's what we hope to be able to encourage people to love people that are in need, whether it's a refugee, an immigrant, a homeless person. Whoever that might be,
the marginalized,
the
the widow.
Yes.
James 1:27, right? True and undefiled religion is to help the widows and the orphans,
right?
And that translates to the needy.
Exactly.
And thank you for brought that verse, because we have a story with a widow that is one of my favorite throughout this journey. This widow came to U.S. with her 18-year-old son and 11-year-old daughter. And the reason he as a widow is because her husband died in a heart attack throughout the process of coming to U.S. And she has no way to go back. She has to come. And she arrived, and through Nazi, we were introduced to her. And Jeff and I and a couple from our church, we went to their house to fix some things and to bring some stuff for her and everything. And then after we finished,
clothes. I think we brought clothes to them.
And yeah. So after we finished, she opened a drawer and she grabbed a handful of almonds, and she came toward me and gave me the almonds, and those almonds were from Afghanistan. And that expression, that gesture, for me was so significant, because she gave it to me, to us, to taste something that she probably wouldn't, I wouldn't say never, but for a long time she would have that taste again. And as an immigrant, I know what that means. I have a story of my own that I hugged a bag of rice in a Brazilian store when I moved here to smell a soap that I ever used in Brazil, but I knew the smell. Mm-hmm. And that was such a comfort to have something from my own country.
Right.
The smell and the taste for my own country. So when she did that, I say she has given to us what she has the most precious from her own country. She's doing exactly what that widow for the Bible did.
With the mite.
It's like the woman with the 2 coins, right?
Well,
that's
what she's talking about.
Yeah.
With them, yeah.
Giving everything.
And,
awesome.
and then this act of hospitality is what we have in experience with all of them. They have such a sense of hospitality that we should learn from them.
Yes. Yeah.
And we need to be hospitable. Yeah,
right.
I mean, Jesus calls us to be hospitable, not just to our buddies and our friends, but to people that
aren't
maybe
like us.
That aren't like us, that we don't have as much in common with. Yeah, to be hospitable to the stranger.
And I think you guys are being a great example of that. I mean, we know this as Christians, we know what we're called to do, but to see people like you putting into action and walking by faith and doing God's work is inspiring. And I pray that people that are listening will be inspired to follow you guys in your footsteps and do the work of God.
Amen.
I'd encourage people to do some research of their own. I mean, we've spit out some facts and statistics, but if it's something that you're getting stirred by just hearing Jeff and Anna, look it into yourselves and see what the need is. I mean, I know, like we said, there's a lot of political stuff involved and whatever party you're involved with, but if you're a Christian, you call yourself a Christian and you follow Jesus, no matter what politics you have, we're to love people, no matter who they are.
Absolutely. I would say don't be political, be biblical.
Amen.
Exactly.
Because
that's
our first. We're citizens in heaven before we're Americans.
Right.
We don't have to agree politically, although policy matters. But we have to be biblical, and it's if you're biblical, you understand what kind of policy you choose for your neighbors.
Amen.
Yeah. We're beginning and then we're going to get ready and close here, I think, but we're going to be beginning a scripture study at a few weeks in our home for people that are interested in this too. And it's called the Sojourner Scripture Study. And it starts in Genesis and goes through the Old Testament into the New Testament. And it just talks about the history of the foreigner and the sojourner through the Israelites, and then the laws that God gave them on how they should treat them, and then go to the New Testament and what Jesus taught us to treat these people. And it's all throughout the Bible. I mean, you can literally find hundreds of verses that talk about this. So we know this is the heart of God, to care for the foreigner and the stranger and the marginalized and the widow. And we just are thankful that we're able to be, have a small part and hopefully making a difference in a few lives.
Yeah.
And if I can say one more thing, I would say that, oh God, I forgot. It's okay.
No, you're fine.
No, yeah, you're fine, because we can just cut this out.
What do you say? To be part of this. Oh, I got it. I have found that time is the most precious commodity or expensive commodity that we have in our time right now. Because as Jeff was saying, we have situations where on Friday night, I would say to Jeff, baby, if you want to go see some client tomorrow, you should go. Because as of now, I don't have anything, in our garage to give away to them. So I can go by myself tomorrow, just hang out with them, And at 10 p.m., we have that situation. At 10 p.m., someone reach out to me, say, hey, I'm moving to San Diego, and if you can, come over tomorrow morning, and you can take anything at my house that you can put in your truck and take to the refugees. And I look at Jeff, okay. We have a lot. And in the next morning, it was so much the truck was not enough. So we have people who moving out and give the whole apartment. We have that situation.
We've had that, yeah.
But you know what we need? We need you. You need your time. You need your commodity that you holding up. Because without you, we can do what we could be doing if we have 10 people, 12 people, 20 people with us. Because although it's not a lot of refugee coming right now, but there is a lot of need in here already.
Yes.
For example, we have been talking about the word relief because of this political situation and everything what is going on. The federal funds for the agencies, all the agencies that works with refugees, they were cut. So they don't have the funds for refugees, and they don't have to justify. They don't have how to justify to the government spending any money with the refugees because that is not mainly coming through those agencies anymore. So they shift what they're doing and the resourcing that they're getting from the state or for the Christian organization, churches and everything that donating to them. They shift the resources and in the provisions to the immigrants, to those crises that we have in our border right now, with isolates from from Central America,
asylum seekers,
from South America. So, what is left for the refugees that are already here, or here and there, some isolates, which at the end of the day is just a label they are putting in those people, because when they arrived, like we were saying before, although they come with a special visa at this moment, because none of the other refugees are able to come to U.S., only isolates seekers. When they arrived, they are refugee, period. They're the same situation. So they are here, and they need our help. They need our help for ESL. The ladies need help to learn how to speak English. They need help how to do homework with the kids. They need help how to go to the doctors. They need help to go to emerging in this culture, which is difficult for me.
To learn how to drive. We know a guy, this guy named Jim, and he's retired, and he just spends all his time helping them to learn how to drive so they can get their license, It's a neat
ministry. It's a lot of need. It's a lot of need. In that culture also is very interesting that a lot of things, the girls do with the girls and the men do with the men. So we need everybody. We need the men. We need the woman. We need everybody. We need people. We need people. We love every furniture. We love every piece of clothing, and we love every piece of books and toys and everything. But just remember, this is America. They're not gonna be without clothes. They're not gonna be naked. They're not gonna be without a table. We know that they can collect that, although they don't have a lot of cars, but they can collect that in the trash. But they cannot collect your love in the trash. They cannot collect you care on the street. But they can see Jesus through your time, to the time that you decide to spend with them. So I am begging you right now to come along with us. Because as much as we'd love to do, we are just two people. A few others that have been coming along. Yeah. But we need more. I wish and I pray, and my desire is that every single refugee, every single person in that community can say later, I became a Christian because I saw Jesus through the person who walked 1 year. I'm requiring just 1 year. Walk alongside those kids, those families for 1 year and show who Jesus is to them.
Amen.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
There it is. That's the call.
Yeah.
Real quick, is there any way? Do you guys have like a website or anything like that?
No.
How would people be able to get a hold of you?
Just
if they wanted
give
to
us a
volunteer?
call.
So like social media and stuff?
Social media, yeah. I
Well-
mean, I use my personal, to be honest with you. And you're going to see a lot of pictures of my grandkids because I love them to death. A lot of pictures of Jeff.
And the call is not just to, help us. We love you to help us. And we've had a lot of people from our church that have helped us, and our pastor's been very supportive of us and
That's awesome.
allowed us to speak in the church too.
Yeah.
But the call is really just to learn more about it and do something yourselves, whether it's with us or there's a lot of organizations around. There's a lot of churches that are involved in helping these people. Yeah.
But like Anna was saying, because of this current situation, those like World Relief had to cut back. There's not funding going into these places. Yeah. So it's a perfect time for Christians around the country to show that love and step in and fill the gap that's not being filled.
Absolutely.
And come alongside these families, like you said, and show love to them.
That's true.
In action.
And it can be in any aspect of that. For example, I work full time and Jeff works full time. So not every day, at my work, I have time to prepare an email or put something on social media or spread the word and everything. Mm-hmm. So if I have someone just to help me with that, it's a simple thing, but it takes time. Yeah,
it's our time.
And every single one of us has gifts and talents that we can use. Not necessarily, but I definitely don't. I work 10 hours a day and I work 11 hours a day. I don't have time. And I totally understand that. But give me 1 hour to do something like that. Mm-hmm. Or any other thing that it will fulfill the gap that we have right now.
Yeah. Amen. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you both for coming. I feel like we could talk for hours.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
we'll put their handle on the link.
Yeah, we'll tag you guys in the show notes, and then as we do, if you follow like our social media, we'll tag you guys on our social media, One Story Podcast, and we'll link people up. Hopefully, I'm sure this is going to stir up a lot in people's hearts, and like you said, it's not like it needs to go directly through you guys, but that this is an avenue. You guys have already started the work. Yeah. There's a community, there's a connection that people can step right into. Yes. But look in your own communities, people that listen out of state, different parts of the world or whatever the case may be. Let's love on these people that need it.
Amen.
Amen.
So,
Amen. You heard it here, everybody. Love Jesus and love people.
Amen.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.